What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved video. We are finally here at a happy Friday for Set 5 Omens Eternal. It is day 1, so I wanted to go ahead and just start talking about the new decks since, the decks are out. If some people are just getting these cards and they're like, alright, what the hell am I supposed to be doing? So, starting from this day on, we're going to be doing Set 5 content, and I'm very excited to see what this new set has in store in terms of meta, in terms of card price, and just in terms of these friendly decks that everybody plays. So, speaking of that, let's figure out what deck that we're going to be talking about today for Dragoncraft. Alright, if you have not been paying attention to the other reveals for the Dragoncrafts, then welcome. We're going to be talking about Dissdain Dragoncraft. So, if you don't know what Dissdain does, you're going to be pinging your followers to be gaining some sort of generation of a curve on your side. So, you play a follower, you deal damage to it, you get some sort of effect off of it if you dealt damage to a follower that turn. So we have Galmiex, we're going to be talking about her pretty soon. She's the premier legendary for the deck, and look at her amazing alternate art. So let's go ahead and figure out what the pros and cons are of playing a Dissdain Dragon. Alright, so we have the pros and cons of Dissdain Dragon. So the pros is that it's a dragon deck. I think dragon decks are just really good, they're very strong. I don't remember a certain time in any sort of the meta or in any place where dragon was just a bad deck, or any of the decks were just like D tier, unless you're running certain cards in the deck that do make it D tier. But I feel like dragon as in a total is just very good, and that kind of leads on into the next point. Since it's dragon, you're also going to be ramping. So ramping is just being ahead, just getting those extra play points is just good enough as it is. And then also with this version of the deck, you're going to have a lot of free play. So Galmiex is going to be playing cards from her cemetery, and if you play other followers that we'll talk about later on in the video, then you'll understand why getting some free play and then getting some real good advantages from doing that free play will be really good. Alright, but moving on into the cons of the Dissdain Dragon. So the first thing that's a problem with this deck is the draw power. So one thing about dragons in total, I can't think of a single dragon deck that had like 6 or 7 cards in hand at all times. So I think that's just in a total for a bunch of Dragoncraft decks. So the draw engine in this deck is not very strong. You need like a 2-card combo for it to really work out, and sometimes if you draw 1 card and you don't have the other, then you're really going to be losing out on the draw. But moving on into the next section, we're going to be talking about the early game. So the early game is definitely something I think also Dragoncraft just lacks in. You do have your turn 1 followers, that's nice. Turn 1, 2, and 3, you're really going to be doing a lot of things that don't really affect your opponent's board or the game state at any point. You're really just doing a whole bunch of things that goes on to the next section is the setup. So what you're really trying to do is set up some followers that you're going to be able to ping, and then being able to get some advantages off of pinging your followers. But at the same time, it's just kind of a back and forth thing with early game and setup. And if you're really having a hard time understanding the setup, so let's say in Hero Sword is a perfect example. Hero Sword setup is to build a board and then swing at you with said board. While your setup is you're setting up followers to ping and you're getting free advantages. You're probably getting at least like another card in your hand, or you're dealing damage to another follower. But at the same time, you have to wait until those later turns because you're going to be ramping, doing a whole bunch of other things, while a deck like Hero Sword is going to be ramping followers and then swinging at you. Alright, and we have our premier legendary that makes the Dissdain Dragons work as well as it does. We have Galmiex. So I think that's how you pronounce her name. I humbly apologize to anyone who's really offended that I cannot pronounce these names, but that's how I'm going to pronounce it. And if I said it wrong, then please let me know down below how to say it, because I apologize. I'm very not good at saying these names. But so when she takes damage during your turn, she can evolve for 0 for the rest of the turn. And one thing I think that I like that they're doing with these new followers is they're making them free. The game's not slowing down anymore. We can use those extra 2 play points if we have them to go ahead and start playing other cards. So you can evolve her for free, and then on her evolve effect, you can select an Omen card that costs 2 play points or less in your cemetery and play it for 0 play points. So during your turn, when this follower takes ability damage, you select an enemy leader or an enemy follower on the field and deal it 3 damage. So it's already pretty cool that she's able to evolve for 0 in the same turn she's played, but it's also pretty cool that she's also able to get any card that's an Omen card that costs 2 play points or less out of your cemetery to be played, and that can be any one of the following cards. Alright, so here are all the cards that you can play out of your cemetery with Galmiex's effects. So we have Total Domination, Disdainful Rending, Disciple of Dissdain, and Servant of Dissdain. But looking at the first card, we have Total Domination. It's a 2-cost spell. You can select the follower on your field deal 2 damage to it and each enemy follower in the field, and then if you have the premier legendary Galmiax on your field, you deal 2 more damage to each enemy follower in the field. So it's pretty nice that we have like a 2-cost board wipe in a sense, but if you have the premier legendary on the field, you're going to be dealing more damage, so a total of 4, and then you have the other effect on the legendary card, so you're going to be dealing 3 to a follower in case, you know, something didn't die off of the board wipe of 4, or you can deal 3 to their leader just in case their board is just gone, and you can just deal damage to them directly. But onward to Disdainful Rending. So you select the follower on your field and an enemy follower on the field, you deal 1 damage to the first follower and 3 damage to the second. So just in case you need to focus on a singular target, we have this card, you're able to deal 3 to it. And then if you have the big girl on the field, Galmiax, you're going to be dealing 6 to a total of something. Or if, you know, the card's not that big and you need to finish off another card, you can just use one of these and then be dealing 3 to that follower and then 3 to face. And then moving on to Disciple of Dissdain, so he's just a 1 cost, but his ability costs 0 to select a follower on the field and then deal 1 damage. This ability can be activated once per turn. Alright, so it looks like this card and Disdainful Rending are going to be the cheapest cards that you have to be getting that free Evolve effect for Galmiax. And then after you're on Evolve effect for whatever card that you pick out of your cemetery to use, then you have an extra way in cheaper terms for pinging her again to be dealing 3 to face or 3 to another follower. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about Servant of Dissdain. So he's a 2 cost. If Overflow is active for you, select another follower on the field, deal 1 damage to it and this follower, and during your turn, whenever this follower takes ability damage, draw a card. So the one thing I enjoy about Shadowverse is that every different craft and class has its own little niche. So we have Dragoncraft with Overflow. So getting to those big play points and ramping is what really matters, and so you can make some more plays. Galmiax is a 5 cost, so, you know, out of 10 play points, you have 5 other play points to play with, you know? So you have lots of cards that in this deck that can really just go for different situations. We have Total Domination for a board wipe. We have Disdainful Rendering just to focus on 1 follower, a pesky follower that's probably accumulating so much value just standing upright. We have Disciple of Dissdain if we need to target other followers like Servant of Dissdain to probably draw 2 cards in the same turn. And then we have Servant of Dissdain for just, you know, just drawing in general. And then, like, just so many things you can do with this deck that I'm very excited to see what you guys can come up with. Alright, so what kind of deck would it be if we didn't have some sort of searcher? So we have Apostle of Dissdain. So during your turn, when this follower takes ability damage, you give her +1 attack and storm. So what she loses in defense, she gains an attack. But you can evolve her for 1, and on evolve you can discard a card. You can look at the top 5 cards of your deck, and from among them you may reveal up to 2 Omen cards and add them to your hand. Then you put the remaining cards to the bottom of your deck in any order, and then she still has that effect of whenever she takes the damage that very same turn, you can give her +1 attack and she can swing that very same turn. Alright, so it looks like Galmiax is not the only card you're going to be using the ping effects for, because she only has so much health. So you have Apostle of Dissdain. So this card is just very good. It's a good searcher for the rest of your Omen cards in your deck if you know you have them. And just being able to ping this follower for an effect just to gain Storm to swing for 3 or 4, it's just pretty nice. So there are some other cards that you can help with this discard effect that you can pitch to gain some sort of value off of discarding a card. Alright, so the time I've been playing Shadowverse, there's one thing I've learned, is that you want to get as much value out of your plays as possible. So these are the cards that you can pitch off of Apostle of Dissdain to get some really good valuable effects off of. So your Dragon New Fist to deal 3 damage to a follower. You can use Trail of Light to go ahead and draw another card off the top of the 2 cards that you get if they are Omen cards, sometimes maybe even 1. And then there's Star Phoenix. So whenever you play a Dragoncraft spell, you can play 1 to put this card from your cemetery onto the field and just threaten more cards on the field. Alright, so here are some helping cards that help as a secondary line of play in the Dissdain deck. So as a Dissdain deck, I believe it's very strong. It has a very good ability of dealing damage to your followers, and then you get some pretty good effects off of, you know, the followers being dealt damage. But there's some other cards like PDK, Prime Dragon Keeper, Airship Whale, and Dracomancer's Rights that really help out the deck a whole bunch. Alright, so in terms of Prime Dragon Keeper with Galmiax's effect, you're going to be playing a 2 or less follower from the cemetery, and they're going to be doing their effects. And then Prime Dragon Keeper's effect is also going to happen too if you have her out on the field. It's just more cards to play around with, and what you can do, and just dealing more damage to the board and field is just pretty nice. And then we have Airship Whale. So I added this into the list for Prime Dragon Keeper, and then I kind of opened up my mind to what Apostle of Dissdain does for Dragomancer's Rights. But I think Airship Whale is just pretty good if you have Prime Dragon Keeper in your deck in general too, just to search for a follower on the field. Yes, it's more evolved to put into your deck, and it's gonna probably, you know, not optimize your list as much. But I feel like if you're running the Prime Dragon Keeper line, this is something you can really open your mind up to. Alright, and we have our Discard Kings with Dragomancer's Rights. So I still believe Discard Dragon to be a very strong deck, but we're really focusing on Dissdain here. So the one thing about Apostle of Dissdain is you do discard a card on the Evo, and with discarding the card you can have Dragomancer's Rights out, and you have to really understand that when you put any of these other cards in this deck, you know, your Omen line of, you know, searching the top 5 for an Omen card will definitely go down, but you know, with these side things, you're going to be doing a lot more in terms of gameplay wise and playstyle wise. You know, you're playing cards, you have Prime Dragon Keeper to be dealing damage to followers in face, Airship Whale to, you know, potentially spam out the board because you play the card right onto the field. Dragomancer's Rights, when you do cards like Apostle of Dissdain to discard, you know, having just more play lines is just very nice. And these are cards that are just really good to think about in terms of secondary win cons for your deck. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the tech card. So the first tech card I want to talk about is Bellringer Angel. So in my opinion, I wouldn't really call Bellringer Angel like a tech card. It's just, you know, if you want to take your deck to the next level, you put Bellringer in your deck because you don't want to die in the early game, for sure. And then her Evolve is just good to tank out those early cards in case you don't have the quick spell in your hand to just go ahead and get rid of them. And then, you know, when she dies, you draw a card. So it's just really good. The other card I want to talk about is Knight's Way. So I've been seeing this a lot in Dragoncraft decks. It's just an extra card to play with in your EX area because most of the cards that you play don't really go to your EX area. So having an extra sort of hand in terms of that, you can use that. You just have to make sure you don't have any cards in your EX area when you want to do this ability again. It's just a good card for the Haven matchup. You know, Egg is kind of running rampant. You know, they're getting cards every set. It's just really good. Andromeda's a thing. And then we have like a new card that deals 2 damage to enemy leaders when it dies. So Egg is just getting more and more stuff as the sets move on. We have Lightning Blast, so this is probably maybe up or down for you guys, but just a card that essentially banishes something so you don't get Last Words effect is nice. And then if you use those 5 more play points, you can banish everything on the field, enemy field that is. So using that in quick timing, I know your opponent's going to see it when you have like 10 play points up, but you know, doing that on the end of their turn to go ahead and stop everything and then them not having like a whole board at all, and then you... Alright, so usually at this time we talk about the good matchups and the bad matchups, but this time I'm not going to be doing it because one, I am not the best Dragoncraft knower. I don't think I know much about Dragoncraft, but I do know about these new decks and, you know, I try my best to learn and go along with you guys. But if you want the good matchups and bad matchups for the rest of the videos when we do videos for these breakdowns, let me know down below if you miss them. I'll try my best to, you know, at least concur some sort of scenario where, you know, Dissdain Dragon might be good against Havengraft or something like that, or definitely know something against Rune because you don't have to, you know, like respect Rune at all. But don't count Rune out because, you know, all these decks got a huge upgrade. But if you want more good matchups and bad matchups in the next videos, let me know down in the comment section below. But we're going to move on to the grade system. So the grade system is how it works. So we're going to go with S tier into F tier. S tier being the best deck, you know, it can do its game plan and just swamp face. And then we have A tier, you know, it's pretty good. B tier, pretty good. C tier, it's starting to get bad. D tier, pretty terrible, but, you know, playable at locals. And then we have F tier, like this deck cannot be played at all. But before we get into the grade system, let's go ahead and look at a sample deck list for Dissdain Dragon. Alright, so here's a sample 40 card deck list that I came up with not too long ago for Dissdain Dragon. It has most of the core engine in it, has some extra stuff in it. I chose the PDK version of the deck just for the extra burn and extra followers and stuff like that. I just saw a lot of card combos in my mind for set 5, like, you know, we have Draconeer to, you deal a damage to a follower, you can get that damage back with a Draconeer Draconic Weapon. I chose Lightning Blast for the board clear, honestly, just to go ahead and, you know, stop your opponent's game plans at quick timing sometimes. Just spot removal in terms of that. But I feel like this is a pretty good list. Now, I'm going to disclaim that I am not a Dragoncraft player. I am not a Dragoncraft player. So I want you guys to play around with this deck, you know, play with your ratios, you know, figure out how this deck works, because this is not going to be on my radar of decks to be playing, because I am not a Dragoncraft player, if I've said that before. So this is a template. So work around with this. This is a very decent list for sure. It has all the engines for the Dissdain. Just let me know how the Dissdain deck has worked for you guys, because I believe this deck is going to be very powerful in terms of PDK with it too. And if you're able to work Airship Whale in it, let me know, because I feel like that card's just very good along with PDK, or any of you PDK players that are going to be playing Airship Whale in your deck for focusing around PDK. Alright, so getting back into the grade of the deck, I want to talk about Dissdain a little bit though. Dissdain is just very strong. I think its ability is very unique. It being in the dragon deck, you can do all these things with all the play points you have from how much you've ramped. You can get into turn 5 pretty easy, turn 6, you know, playing both of those things before your opponent's really ready. And then you're going to be playing cards out of your cemetery that you hopefully have used, you know, going into your earlier turns, that being Omen cards, of course, with the legendary Galmiex. So I feel like I would give the deck a big A. It's very good. It has strong cards. It's still dragon at the end of the day. It's going to ramp. Now out of its, you know, brother and sister deck, being discard dragon and heal, probably might not be as strong as those decks, but I think it's still going to hold up pretty nicely. Well, alrighty guys, that is the end of the video, and before we close out, I want to go ahead and announce that I am going to be launching my Patreon starting next week. I'm going to get all the videos, you know, together this weekend to have it very exclusive, and I should have it ready by this Monday. And also, I want to say that I'm sorry that I have not been recording our Sunday webcam tournaments. It's just been a little slow with set 4 and everything. Everyone's excited for set 5, but we do have one more webcam tournament where we're still on set 4, but we will have UMA legal this Sunday, so look out for that. We'll be streaming on Twitch. I'm trying my best to get to streaming on YouTube. I'm trying to get all this stuff for you guys together, but this upcoming Monday, everything should go back to normal. We'll have our Mark and Watch Wednesday. We'll be going over the different decks and different breakdowns throughout that next week. And then the week after that, hopefully we'll be in more of the BSF stuff, and we'll be talking about the new decks that topped. Well, alrighty guys, thank you so much. I love you. Make sure you're safe whatever you do tonight, and safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.